Well, we had a big storm yesterday. It knocked out the power and it's still out the next day. I don't have much else to do other than clean up. The workshop is already cleaned up, so I thought it would be a good time to tackle one of the hand saws that I pointed out earlier. Take the one that has the handle that's still good and clean it up and fix it up and resharpen it. So that'll be the subject of today's video. This handsaw is rusty, yes, but it's still in good shape. It's redeemable. The thing that you want to look for is to make sure that there aren't any really deep bits, especially up where the teeth are, because that's where you'll need to have fairly smooth metal. The rest of the plate really doesn't matter. If there's some deep pits in that, that's okay. The main thing is that you can clean it up and make it smooth again. Now, the first thing I'll need to do is take the handle off until you try to loosen these bolts here. And that one doesn't want to come. And this one is just turning around. And this one's the same thing. And that one also. So I'm going to have to try to work at that to try to loosen those up a little bit and come back. I'm just going to tap on it a few times here to see if that'll loosen it up. No, they still won't come loose. I figure that the only way I'm going to be able to undo these screws is to make it so I can grab it on the other side with a screwdriver as well. So I've put it in my vise. Now I'm going to cut a slot with the hacksaw. Well, I'm not overly confident that I'm going to be able to get these out. I might have to drill them out. All right, so this is a lost cause. I'm sure that if I had the time, I could, spray some oil in around there, let them soak overnight or a couple of days, but that doesn't do anything for me today. I want to do this now. So I have another handsaw that has 3 bolts in it, and I've already tried it, and they come out easily. So I'm going to use those, and then I'm going to find another bolt later. 3 is enough. 4 is better. Obviously, it looks better, especially if all the holes are filled, but it'll hold it together until I can find another one. The problem with this saw is that the blade is bent and kinked, and I mainly bought it to use the steel for something else. So I can take these bolts out and use them in this saw. All right, now I've got my cordless drill here. Thank God for battery power. And I've got a 5/32 bit in here that I'm going to start with. I'm not going to drill all the way through. I'm just going to drill as far in as I think I need to break this head off on this side. Now I'm going to switch to a 1/4 inch drill bit and drill the holes bigger. Now it might start to turn, and you counteract that. You can wiggle the drill bit from one side to the other and it will start again. Now taking it over to my other vise to drive the rest of the bolts out. I'm using a number 8 machine screw to do that. Now I'm looking at these in the light. They are pretty corroded and they are also bent, so I don't think I would get these out. Well, now with the bolts taken out, the handle should just come right off. And it does. A little bit rusty inside there, but that's no big deal. Now what I'll do is I'll take it over to the anvil here and flatten the teeth. Now to flatten the teeth, I'm just going to lay it on the anvil and just gently tap. I got the sissy grip happening here, so I'm not pounding too hard. I don't want to deform the metal. I just want to flatten the teeth. Okay, that doesn't get rid of all of the set, but it gets it pretty flat. And it also gives you a chance to look and see if there's any bends or anything. And in here, I've got a little bit of a bend right here that I'm going to try to correct. I'm just going to do that with my thumbs pressing in the exact spot where I see the bend. And then check it again and do that until I'm happy that it's 100% straight, or as straight as I need it to be. So I've taken the set out. I'm going to sand the side of this now. Guys have recommended electrolysis, but the thing about electrolysis is, first of all, it's a big mess. Second of all, electrolysis works with electricity to take the metal away. And what you have here is you have metal in the base, but then on the surface here you have rust. Rust is oxide. Oxide is not conductive. So you're going to be eating away the metal underneath the rust to remove the rust. So better to break out the sandpaper and do a little bit of rubbing, I think. Now to start cleaning up the blade, I've got a piece of melamine here that will keep the blade up off my workbench, so I'm not going to mess that up too much. I'm going to start with a file, drawing it across the side like this to get rid of any more of the set that's left. I don't want any of the set sticking up and tearing up my sandpaper as I try to sand the rust off. So I'm just going to pull that across, and you can see, I'll get the camera in, and you can see where the teeth are being filed off. With the teeth filed flat, I can get started on the sanding. I've got my sanding block here, and in it I've got a piece of 100 grit sandpaper to start with. Now that might sound aggressive, but what I'm trying to do is knock the top surface off of this. I'm not going to be eating into the metal too much with this. All right, I'm pretty happy with that side. Now I can flip the blade over and do the other side. Well, now with that sanding done, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. You probably can. You can see the places where the blade was a little bit bent. This normally happens when the wood grabs and you go sideways with it and it makes a little tiny bit of a kink. And I can see one right here, here, and a little bit here and here. But the main thing is that the blade itself is straight and that there's no cracks, and there doesn't seem to be any here, and the blade is nice and flat. Now I'm going to move on to the 220 grit. I've got to put in my sanding block again. I'm going to use one sheet for one side of the blade. I'm going to be using it dry here, and I'm going to do a lot of rubbing on this to try to get rid of all of the rust that I can see here. I'm not going to try to wear into the steel too much, but getting it brightened up a little bit would be nice. Okay, so I've done both sides and now I'm ready to move on. One thing I want to do is do a little bit more tuning up. Sanding with the flat sanding block here showed me areas that need more work, and they'll come up really shiny. That's where the blade was bent previously. So to work on that, I'm just going to take that area with my hammer and not really hard, just tap it out on a surface that gives. What I'm looking for here is a dead flat blade. I'm not necessarily looking for pretty or overly shiny, but it really needs to be flat. So I'm just going to take those areas that are shiny on this side, pound on them a little bit, flip the blade over. Any place that I see shiny on that side, pound it. And what that does is it bends it in. It'll actually bend into my worktop here a little bit and wind up being a lot more straight. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, so I'm going to continue to do that until I'm happy that the blade is absolutely dead straight. Well, I pounded out as much of the dents as I possibly could. It's looking really good. The next step that I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my sharpening stone, the fine side. I'm not entirely sure how fine that stone is, but it's pretty good. And I'm going to put some oil on the blade, like that. And I'm going to rub this along it to make it even more flat. You might notice that I'm doing all this in the direction that the saw cuts. You really don't want cross hatch lines on here. You want lines that go from front to back. Well, I've gone over it with the stone and I'm happy with how flat it is, finally. So my next step, although it's strictly optional because the blade is actually in good now, ready to set and sharpen, that is. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take it a little bit further. I'm going to take my 220 paper that I had in the sanding block, I folded it up in 3 pieces like this, and I'm going to try to get rid of some of the dark areas here just to make it look a little tiny bit better. It certainly can't hurt. A little oil on there and rub those areas with the grain of the saw to try to cut them down a little bit, remove a little bit more of the pitting. I know I'm going to get asked in the comments what kind of oil this is. It says air tool oil on here, but I ran out of this a long time ago and refilled it with motor oil mixed with mineral spirits to thin it down. Well, it's a messy job, but I'm left with a blade that is perfectly usable. I think I paid $2 for this saw at the Habitat for Humanity. It was probably made sometime in the 80s. It's a Mibro. I don't know if they still make saws. They probably weren't making very good saws, but this steel is perfectly fine. Well, originally I thought I was going to be able to have time to make a saw vise. That's something that fits in your regular vise and clamps the saw blade in. But since I don't have any power tools, I'm not about to try to make one. So I've taken my piece of melamine and snapped it in half here. And it's just long enough for the blade. And I'm going to take the blade, stick it in between the 2 sheets until it's sticking up about 1/4 inch. And then clamp it in to my vise. All right, I'm going to start at the end here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each tooth 4 strokes straight across. I'm going to say this right now that I'm not an expert. I'm not pretending to be. I do know how to clean up steel to make it so that it's not rusty anymore. And I do have experience using hand saws. I used to use them when I was a kid, before I was allowed to use power tools. But when it comes to sharpening, I had to do a little bit of looking, and a guy that I watch often on YouTube is Paul Sellers, and I got great respect for him. And he has a method of sharpening blades that makes a lot of sense to me, so I'm going to copy that and follow his recommendation. Now, I'm not going to show it in depth here. You're going to see me filing some teeth, yes. But if you want more details on it, I recommend you go to his channel and check out his videos on saw sharpening, and I'll leave a link in the description for that. Okay, well, sad news, folks. I got, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through filing the blade through the first pass, and the power came back on. So what I'm going to have to do is I really need to go finish editing tomorrow's video. This is Saturday. Tomorrow's Sunday. I'm really supposed to have this video out today, but since I lost my power yesterday afternoon, I couldn't finish anything. So I'm going to go finish that. I'm going to actually end this video here, and I'm going to continue it with the power back on at some other time. So look forward to that. I'm going to edit this up as soon as possible and get it uploaded. And then what I'll do is I'll make part 2 where I finish sharpening the blade, set the teeth, finish the handle, and put it all back together.